Hello everyone. Today I want to talk about X-Men 97 for a bit. Not like as a review or anything, but just like sort of get my thoughts out. This video isn't spoiler free. I'm going to be talking like genuinely giving spoilers for basically everything that I say. Anyway, let's just get started here. So the first episode, X-Men the animated series came out in like 2000, no, not even 2000, 1992 or something. And in case you didn't know, X-Men 97 takes place at least 2 years after the animated series actually finished. So the series kind of has some work to do with getting people reacclimated or like learning what the hell is happening. So I am immediately in the first episode. I think they do a lot of good setup with like who everyone is, what the status quo is, how people's powers work. Generally, there are some characters that I feel like their powers are like, confusing. I still don't really understand, or like I think they're weird. Other than that, for the first episode, the only other thing I want to say is that sometimes this series can kind of be like melodramatic. What was it? It's kind of like how things work out in like Mortal Kombat. Like you just have stupid fights out of nowhere. They're gonna have like a basketball match, and then Logan and Scott have a small argument with each other, like out of nowhere, as if that was like so big or important or anything. At the end of the episode, we get a cliffhanger. All of these episodes, every single one, even the finale. Well, I guess that makes more sense for the finale, but like every single episode, aside from maybe, to be honest, the Genosha episode, has a cliffhanger at the end, which kind of gets old. So the cliffhanger in this episode is that, as I said, the show sets up the status quo of the series, and like it explains apparently Charles Xavier is dead, and apparently in his will, which is kind of odd that they wouldn't know this. I don't know how wills work. I guess I've never been dead. Charles gave the mansion, the school, everything to Magneto, and that's revealed at the end. That's our cliffhanger. Yeah, so in the second episode, Magneto shows up, and him and the rest of the team kind of bicker, and they don't really like it, but you know, Charles decided that, so it's whatever. They kind of allow it. But then the UN come in, and then they say, hey, we need to try you. You're under arrest. And then Magneto's like, yeah, sure, I'll go to court. However, at the conference, they get like attacked by, I think they called him OZT later on. I don't know. They named this one character, which I found like cheesy. It was nice. Executioner. That was pretty. Anyway, at the UN, what happens, which kind of like really shows like the status. I don't know, I'm not sure if I'm using this word correctly at this point. Like, really sets the status quo is this one guy, Executioner, has like this OP gun which can take away mutants' powers or something, and he shoots Storm, which is like, Storm is like, maybe not like planetary scale, well, galactic scale, but she's like planetary OP, isn't she? She's like one of the strongest X-Men, isn't she? And this guy immediately takes out Storm in the second episode, which is like huge. And then afterwards, when Storm loses her powers, she's kind of like, you know what? If I don't have my powers, I'm not like an X-Men. I'm gonna run away. And then she goes like to have her a self-discovery storyline, which I'll talk about later. Other things in this episode. So Gambit and Rogue are like interested in each other, but because of Rogue's powers, they can't really be each other. However, Magneto, and this is kind of like what I was talking about earlier with like some people's powers being kind of wishy-washy. Magneto, because of his electromagnetism or whatever, can resist or like isn't affected by Rogue's powers. So like since Rogue can only be with him, she ended up being with him at some point, and then like Magneto showing back up kind of starts that up again. And man, Gambit takes it so. Gambit is done so bad in this show, man. I can't believe it. But I'll talk about that in like 3 more episodes. Okay, so the third episode. Oh yeah, the cliffhanger for the second episode. Their Storm goes running away, and then Morph, who, as I said, like the show sets up pretty well, right? Morph, as you can tell from the name, morphs into other characters. They showed that in the first episode, which he's kind of used as like a reference machine, which is kind of whatever, you know, I guess, kind of forced. But anyway, Storm runs away, and then there's a knock at the door. And Morph is like, oh, that must be her. Storm has come back. But then, apparently, it's Jean. There are now 2 Jeans, and this is really confusing to me, and I still don't get it after, like, rewatching maybe these, like, story parts 4 times or something. I feel like I almost understand it, but I still don't. Yeah, so Jean shows up, but there's already a Jean, and that's the cliffhanger there. So then the third episode, there are now two Jeans. People are confused about it. The Jean who showed up is like almost dead. Turns out Mr. Sinister kidnapped the original Jean and then cloned her and then sent the clone back to the mansion. And it's kind of weird how that stuff could like happen. I guess we're just supposed to accept it and you know, it's whatever. Except it's really confusing. Anyway, this sort of adds like tension and like adds some more problems. Scott is confused as hell. I can't blame him. I'm confused as hell. There's like obviously problems with like the original Jean being upset that, oh yeah, I didn't say this before. So in the first episode, they showed Jean was pregnant and in the second episode, she finally gave birth. Yeah, the original Jean would be kind of upset that her clone got boinked by Scott. So later on, Mr. Sinister shows up and then fully like takes control of the clone Jean, and then she becomes, as they call her, the Goblin Queen, which I don't know where that name comes from, I guess. I mean, she just looks like a goth. I don't understand where the goblin part comes in. Also the queen thing too, but you know, whatever. I mean, you know, Dark Phoenix makes a whole lot of sense. Like it's a bird on flames, that's a phoenix. You make it black, there we go, it's dark. But where does Goblin Queen come in? Anyway, later on, when the team goes to fight the Goblin Queen, there's kind of, it's not a problem at all, really, but it just seemed like there was a bit of inconsistency with the animation, like frame rate. I don't know, if you look at the shot where Jean is sitting down on that like throne, that chair, and then she gets up, that like has a bit smoother frame rate. Confusingly. Anyway, I also want to mention that fight there. Maybe I'm just stupid because it's like a painted glass or whatever, but it kind of made me think about the test animation that Corridor Digital did with, you know, the cell shading or whatever. Yeah, then Mr. Sinister, something I want to say about the bad guys in this show. Maybe it's because I'm not that deep into the X-Men lore or whatever, but I want to say this. We have a few bad guys in this show. We have Mr. Sinister, of course. Then we have Trask, and then I think the other guy's name is Gyrick. And Sinister, whatever, he has a whole ass costume or whatever. He looks like a whole, like, menace. Sinister guy. And then there's another character which I don't really want to say right now. But my point is, besides Sinister, these other three characters, these guys are all just white men. And I got confused at some point, at like which is which. Also because they both use the first and last name interchangeably sometimes. Like sometimes they just say Bolivar and then they say Trask too. And I don't know the Gyrick guy's other name too. But yeah, that's what I want to say about oh no, that's not all. The other thing I want to say about this episode. So Storm ran away and then like freaking Nevada or something, she comes across this guy called Forge, which like is able to make machines or whatever. There you go, the name. Her short storyline that she has is genuinely not interesting, man. The Goblin Queen stuff, I'm okay with that. But Storm's like side plot in the desert, I can totally have not done with. She had her own little enemy. I think the subtitles called her the Adversary or whatever. I don't know. She has like a weird self-discovery arc in the desert, and I just was not interested in any of it. Okay, the fourth episode. Honestly, the fourth episode, I'm not saying it's bad. I just think it might be the weakest of all of these episodes, all of these 10 episodes. I honestly, like, I forgot this episode existed. Apparently this episode is the one with, it has a stupid name too. What was it called? Montendo? Jubilee and the new character they introduced to help the audience surrogate character. I don't even remember his name. They want to have some fun, and then they end up playing a game called a Montendo. So, and they get sucked into it, and it's just entirely forgettable. It has nothing to do with anything else in the season. I don't even remember the bad guy's name in this episode. Well, it's not, to be honest, like, it's a one-off. There's this kind of problem this series has, I kind of feel like, especially since it was, you know, paired with this show being released weekly instead of being a binge dump. I feel like this season, or this series, X-Men 97, kind of has this problem where it's like in between being serialized and episodic, because like this video game episode, this Montendo episode, is completely filler and like has nothing to do with anything and has like a literal villain of the week. But then the rest of the show is like a whole whole throughway storyline. Yeah, like I said, this episode is filler. I don't even remember the bad guy's name in this episode. Like, it had a villain of the week episode. There's like some shenanigans with Jubilee being stuck in a game infinitely and she's old. I don't know. I don't even know the implications of that. This isn't brought up again. That nobody is concerned about like a whole pocket dimension instead of inside of a game device. This episode is kind of actually semi split into two as well. The other half, again, not helping this episode at all, in my opinion, is the other half is the Storm arc. And you already know how I feel about that. So that's that episode, the fourth episode. This might be the weakest, to be honest. And then episode 5. Honestly, after like a weak episode like that, I can't believe we might have like one of the best episodes in this season. Aside from maybe like 9 and the 9th and 10th episode, or like the 8, 9, and 10, the last few episodes, I'm not sure. But like this episode is like really good. Something I want to mention, I mentioned this before when talking about the Ghostbusters reboot movies. The Ghostbusters reboot movies constantly show like iconography, like a EMP meter or whatever it was called, or like the Ghostmobile and the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man, and it's supposed to make you go like, oh my god, it's Thing I like. Oh, remember that thing? And that is stupid and a cash grab, and I don't like it. However, in the 5th episode of X-Men 97, they go to Genosha, which is like a mutant haven, and there are a bunch of mutants, and I'm constantly going like, oh my god, it's that thing, it's that guy. In this episode, we have like Emma Frost, who shows up out of nowhere, and then she comes back later in another episode, just very shortly. It's constant like cameos like that. Earlier, what I said was like kind of melodrama too. Another thing that happens in this episode is like a news crew comes to the mansion and they have an interview with Scott. And Scott kind of, I understand Scott is like stressed or whatever, but he kind of just has like an outburst out of nowhere. And that is like ridiculous. Anyway, the crew is in Genosha. Genosha wants Magneto to be the king of Genosha or whatever. And he's like, I need a queen. And then he goes to Rogue and is like, hey, I'm gonna be king and I want you to be my queen. And then she's upset at him, which is understandable. Magneto is like very manipulative, to be honest, thinking about it again. That is not, this stuff is not okay. But what is probably even more not okay, after this, after Magneto goes and tells Rogue goes to confide in Gambit, and Gambit is just sitting in his chair contemplating his life as Rogue is crying to him, saying, I can't touch anyone, I can't be close to anyone. And Gambit is dying inside, and he's like, you know what, you're gonna do whatever, you do you. If your heart's really there, you know, go be with him or whatever. They have a dance or whatever. Genosha is having a celebration. They have a dance, and everyone is there, and then Rogue shows up in a nice dress, and is flying, and Magneto flies up to her, and then they start dancing. They're not even just dancing like nicely, like, you know, 1 2 1 2 or something. I don't even know how you did. Whatever, you know what I mean. They're like almost at a nightclub. They're straight gonna start having foreplay right on the dance floor or dance sky midair. The Gambit deserved so much better, but I'm getting ahead of myself. Man, the clone gene. I think it's that one, is in Genosha, and again, I'm not sure, that stuff's confusing. Nightcrawler is in Genosha, and that's really cool too. However, immediately, almost like Attack on Titan, like one of the Titans blasting up all of a sudden and like punching the wall or whatever. Almost like that, there's a giant monster in Genosha and wreaking havoc, and Magneto, Rogue, and Gambit fight off the monster. Magneto almost dies. Rogue is going crazy, and then Gambit uses himself as bait. Gets himself, I'm pretty sure my knowledge of the X-Men has been like from the movies, and Gambit only showed up in Wolverine Origins, and those movies weren't good anyway. I'm pretty sure Gambit's ability is like touching something and then making it like kinetic and like explode. Gambit sacrifices himself. He goes up to the monster, gets himself stabbed, and uses the like weapon, the pole that he was stabbed with, to blow up the monster. He deserved so much better. That really enrages me. That was a really bad episode. I mean, like, it was really good. It was super good. It just made me feel bad. It was really good on like how dramatic, I guess it was. Yeah, that's the 5th episode. Okay, and then it's almost like a pattern at this point. We had the fourth episode, which wasn't as good. Then we had the 5th episode, which was amazing. And then we have the 6th episode, which has, okay, so we set up in the 1st episode that Xavier died, but turns out he wasn't dead. He ran away into space to be with his space girlfriend. And then the other plot in this episode is Storm. And I can't tell you how boring these episodes are. Again, other than the fact that going like, because it's in space and there's like so many other characters. Among them, the only one I could tell is like Ronan from like Guardians of the Galaxy. Other than that, this episode is really boring again. The only thing kind of fun is like when Xavier sits everyone down, uses his telepathy to put everyone into like a space classroom. That's cool. What else happens in this episode? Storm finally gets her powers back, has like a self-discovery journey. That's cool. And another thing I want to say is with the bad guys, again, this is kind of general, I guess, not really with the bad guys necessarily. Some powers are kind of confusing. Like this other bad guy I didn't say earlier, his power is to like control machines, and he can just make machines out of will to do whatever he wants, like a robotic arm out of nowhere to like hold someone or whatever. Not only that, you know, how do you make a teleportation device? A teleportation device would probably be a machine, so he can do that. And just like, what the hell is the line here, you know? Also, another note I want to say, just as a tidbit, Magneto can just fly. Rogue can just fly, apparently. I didn't know that, but Magneto can just fly and like carry objects. But I want to say, I thought it was only like metal stuff, and at some point I legitimately thought he put metal in his shoes to lift himself up. That's how he was flying, I thought. But no, he just uses electromagnetism to lift an entire mountain or whatever. Not like metal. It just kind of gets blurry. Just making a quick addendum here. I noticed I didn't mention what I actually wanted to say. There's a slight pet peeve I have talking about this character who can just make machines and do whatever he wants. Like he's that strong, he's that knowledgeable, whatever. It's kind of a pet peeve I have with these sorts of characters who can just do anything because they're that good at it, where they become basically godlike. The same thing happens with both Rick from Rick and Morty and also Kang from the MCU, or Kong. No, Kang. Yeah, that's about it. Okay, that episode's out of the way. Okay, now episode 7. The thing I want to say about this episode. So the X-Men are having a funeral for Gambit, and Nightcrawler is giving the eulogy. Nightcrawler's so cool. Rogue is a no-show because she's dealing with it in her own way, and honestly it's kind of like, what's that saying again? It's like hell hath no fury like a woman scorned or something. Rogue is going honestly to fucking town, destroying military bases, and along with that, let me say this other thing I want to say. I said this earlier, but like again, like, oh my god, it's that thing I know. Before they even mentioned his name, I saw the generals, like Rogue is attacking an army base or something, and I saw the general's name tag, and I immediately know, oh my god, that's General Ross. That's cool. Anyway, Rogue is going AWOL, destroying army bases, trying to find answers on what the hell happened on Genosha or whatever. She goes to another place after this army guy. Is that how it happened? She goes to 2 places. First, she goes to some snowy place and like, oh my god, another thing, it's Captain America. Honestly, it kind of feels like that sexual harassment meme. You guys doing references? No. X-Men Marvel references though. Anyway, she goes to that snowy place, and then afterwards she goes to like a Mexican place, and I don't understand what happens there either. Some scenes are kind of confusing like that. Like I really don't understand. Another thing happens later on too, but I can't remember. Anyway, the team meets up with Rogue, and then they get a call from Gyrick, I think it was. I can't remember which one. And they meet up. They find Gyrick, and what I want to say is they make an Oppenheimer reference, and honestly I feel like the only reason they made such a reference is because Oppenheimer came out like a year ago. That's the only thing. It's like kind of forced, or like I know the only reason they made an Oppenheimer reference is because the movie came out. So Gyrick is about to commit suicide, and then Rogue stops him, talks to him a little bit more, and then when he doesn't give answers, Rogue drops the guy, and then the team reacts like she did something really bad or whatever. But honestly, am I a bad person? What's so bad about that? He was gonna kill himself anyway. And like it's just like they act like she crossed a line she should have never crossed, and it's like kind of weird. That's like kind of part what I mentioned earlier about like there's kind of melodrama. Oh no, actually the thing I want to say about Attack on Titan was this part actually. Sure, it's the same thing that happened in Genosha, but in this part here, he drops the guy and then you turn back and like Rogue gets punched hard as if like a Titan is punching the wall. That's what I meant to say, but I mixed them up. Same thing though. Anyway, turns out Gyrick is like some cyborg mutant or something. Not a mutant, but like machine. And Cable shows up. And what I kind of want to mention with Cable is that this is again kind of a problem X-Men 97 has with it being tied to the original series. They act like I don't know if I haven't watched the original series, but they act like they know each other, but then also for us, the audience right now, they have to explain how things work. Like there's both familiarity and also like an explanation despite that, or like unfamiliarity too. Yeah, and then on to the 8th episode, things I want to say about this episode. As Rogue is resting, because she got knocked the fuck out. As Rogue is resting, I think it was Jean and Nightcrawler talking next to her bed with each other. Nightcrawler gives a speech to Jean, and I really like that speech. He gives a speech about chosen family, and I really like that. Like that, what Nightcrawler says there really encapsulates what my feeling towards like Guardians of the Galaxy, or like, well, I don't want to get more cringe, but like that kind of stuff, you know, choosing who you want to be associated to or who you keep close to you. And then we finally kind of get our full introduction to the actual big bad guy of this season. His name is Bastion. This is the guy with the machines I mentioned earlier. Turns out he was like, hey guy, he went across the world. He's like, hey guys, is anyone racist against mutants? If you're racist against mutants, come join my experiment. And his experiment is like turning everyone who's racist against mutants into a human sentinel to kill other mutants, and they all have like a sleeper code or something, or like he turns them on or something, I can't remember. And they all have like they all are legitimately nano machines, son. They all turn into hundreds of thousands of sentinels. It's crazy. Yeah, another confusing scene, like I mentioned earlier, this is the other one. So the news reporter lady is with Hank, with Beast, and then she kicks Hank because she's racist against mutants too. She has the sentinel stuff too. She kicks Hank into the ground, but then Hank goes flying up. I don't understand what the hell is going on with that. Scott, Cable, and Jean are running away from a bunch of human sentinels, and they overtake the is that the Quinjet? Quinjet is Avengers, right? I don't know. The X-Jet. I don't know what it is. They destroy the jet, which actually it comes up again later. Do you just have a bunch of jets? I guess they do. Anyway, they destroy the jet. They go into back. And they have an entire X-Men themed Porsche inside of it. It's incredible. It's crazy. It's crazy. I love that silly, goofy stuff. That was funny. So there are a bunch of Sentinels attacking the mansion. And Nightcrawler and Logan are protecting Rogue, who's still like knocked out. And the fight they have is like really cool. The Nightcrawler fight is like really cool. It's like comparable to like what was it called? The No Diggity fight from TMNT. What else? One of the UN representatives is like with Magneto, who's captured by Bastion, and she doesn't do something that Bastion wants, so she is like caught by Bastion too. And then she starts talking, giving a speech, and something I want to mention, I guess kind of this plus Nightcrawler speaking in the beginning of the episode, and then also like Scott talking on the news or whatever. The series can kind of be preachy sometimes, or kind of like you know, characters who go on entire paragraph long rants, or like not rants, but like moral speeches they give, mainly to be honest, it just kind of feels preachy. I don't know. Oh yeah, another thing about like powers too. Magneto breaks free from his captivity, and then like because there's a bunch of human sentinels, he does like an EMP. From my understanding, he does an EMP wave around the globe. That's like, when like maybe the movies explain them entirely wrong. It's just like, you know, when did it become from metal to like magnetism? You know, I guess like it is in his name, just like that wasn't the skill set I grew up with, I guess to say. I learned as a kid. The ninth episode. I didn't mention this earlier. I guess from the storyline she had earlier, Storm's arc she had before, we kind of learn that Storm doesn't like technology that like suppresses mutant powers, which is understandable for her. But she gets into kind of a hissy fit about the X-Men using it against Bastion. But then they use it anyway. It's weird. Magneto decides he's going to deal with Bastion himself or something. I kind of forgot, or like kind of don't really comprehend the end plan entirely by myself entirely anymore. After like finishing it, I don't really remember. Magneto is against, I think everyone is against Bastion, but Magneto is against Bastion in a different way or something. Magneto comes to the X-Men and is like, hey, I'm splitting up. If anyone wants to be with me, if anyone wants to be on my side, join now. And then Rogue kind of expectedly, understandably, flips to the other side. She kind of plays like a Mystique part in that sense. What else? Scott and Cable are talking with each other, and something I did not expect was them to make a reference to the original movies. In the original movies, Logan makes a remark on their suits because like everything has to be edgy and serious, and like yellow and blue or navy isn't cool and badass, so they had like leather suits, black leather suits. And then Scott in this show, Scott gives Cable his own outfit, and he says like really yellow and blue or whatever, and then Scott says, what did you expect, black leather? That was a really good reference. I really enjoyed that. So the X-Men split up. One team is going to some island where Bastion is, and then the other team is going to where Magneto is or something. I don't understand it. Even like, I don't understand their plan really. Later on, like they have to do something sequentially or something. They have to be in sync. And at some point, Scott, Cyclops, attacks Professor Xavier because they have to, not literally Professor Xavier, he's like mind controlling Magneto or something, but he stops him because they have to wait for the other team. I don't understand what their plan is. Something I want to say, kind of similar to what Cosmonaut said about like the difference between DC characters and MCU characters, is on Earth, on the island, morphs into the Hulk, which was really cool. And then he says like morph smash or whatever. Anyway, Morph jumps up as the Hulk to punch a giant sentinel or something. And then Jean uses telekinesis to like fling Hulk further or whatever. That team up stuff is like really cool. It was really fun to watch those fights. On the island, I still don't really understand what the hell Sinister's plot or like importance is. Sinister, both from his name and his design, I guess, kind of seem like they would be cooler or like more important or more stronger. Sinister has the balls to go against Jean Grey and then quickly gets his ass handed to him. I think the reveal that since Cable is the son of Scott and Jean, Cable also having like slight telekinetic and like laser powers, I think that reveal was pretty cool. And then over on the Magneto side of the fight, there's another thing. This is kind of like a trope of the X-Men at this point that I'm going to mention. Another thing I'm going to mention. One is like Mystique flip-flopping constantly, and Magneto like kind of I don't know, they fight each other, but then like, you know, we have to fight again next week, you know, so things can't be that serious. Another thing is like Magneto using his powers to absolutely brutalize Wolverine. This happened kind of in Days of Future Past 2. That scene at the end of the 9th episode, that was brutal. Oh yeah, another trope. So let's go on to the 10th episode. Let's finish this up kind of quickly. Another trope is that this agreement between Magneto and Charles, like when they were good with each other, when they were younger, I guess. This agreement they had with each other that Professor X would not use mind control onto Magneto, and him eventually being forced to do it onto Magneto. That's like, that happens so frequently. That's like a trope at that point, at this point. Yeah, next, again along the lines of powers, Bastion is like the big bad guy, super strong or whatever. I don't understand the strength of Rogue at this point. I did not know. I guess I don't think she ever flew in the original movies. She was just like a mutant who like stole powers or like took life or something like that. But apparently she could fly this entire time. I did not know that. Also, she's like super strong and like punches Bastion around entirely. On it, you can kind of say it's nitpicky, but also, you know, they're fighting in space. Rogue is in space. I can kind of accept Bastion because he's entirely a machine at that point or something. But then Rogue is like breathing in space or whatever too. And then the rookie kid is in space too. I don't understand what I mean, I guess maybe they were like in low atmosphere, you could say, but even still that like you can't breathe well in there. I thought that the goodbye that Scott and Jean give to Cable was very touching. I thought Scott saying Jean said, "You have my eyes," and then him telling Jean to like suppress his powers so that Cable could see his eyes. I thought that was very nice. That was pretty. I think that's basically all I want to say about X-Men 97. I still don't know what the plan was at the end. The entire machine, the entire mountain or whatever that was flying and was gonna go crashing into the earth, that blows up and then that sends everyone there across time. Some people are in the ancient past and some people are in the ancient sure, fuck it, ancient future. As I've been saying, I understand, like, there are a bunch of characters, like, when, Magneto made his EMP pulse around the world, we saw, like, so obviously you'd see Spider-Man, but, like, later on, when all the human sentinels are like, attacking, we see, like, you know, Daredevil, whatever, too. We see Cloak and Dagger, I think it was, and then we also see King T'Chaka, which is cool. I don't know who the Japanese samurai guy, he looked kind of cool. But when we go into past and future and like the two split up teams now, see a few people and they introduce themselves and introduce the place. They say who they are, they say where where this place is, and they're saying names and I have no idea what the hell those places are. I'm not that deep into it. But yeah, I'm super excited for X-Men 97. Honestly, this kind of came out in a bad time, and honestly, I kind of feel like it came out in a bad way too. I said earlier that I feel like this not being binge dropped was kind of poor for it, to be honest. Kind of like with what Cosmonaut also said with the What If series. It being, you know, what if he said it would have been better to watch What If episodic weekly instead of as a binge. I feel like this series is kind of confused on like what it wants to be, like if it wants to be a whole like episodic thing or like a serialized thing. That is also kind of affected by like how it's released as well. And also paired up with it being released right next to the Fallout TV show. That was not good timing for it, unfortunate timing for it, I'd say. Also, there's there's an end credit stinger. There's a teaser for Apocalypse. That's also kind of out of nowhere, to be honest. I don't know what they're going to do. I mean, look at Rogue's ass right here. Looking at this, I mean, the entire frame, of course. I would assume that Apocalypse already showed up in the original series. I don't know what the hell is gonna happen, but I just know I'm excited for it the same way I was excited for Fallout. Like we got some really good shows these last few months, along with like Fallout and X-Men 97. These have been really good together. Yeah, I think that's about all I want to say. I already placed this on the tier list we have. I think I'm still okay with where I placed it. But something I want to say, I don't know what I was on in the Kung Fu Panda 4 video. I'm looking at this more and more, and like side by side, Megamind 2 is not a 2 out of 10. Megamind 2 is a 1 out of 10. I don't know what I was on. Yeah, that's about it. This has mostly just been like talking about the series instead of like kind of like more so dissecting it or whatever. Yeah, thank you for watching. That's about it. Bye, everyone.